Alright, so Ilhan Omar came out, made a speech, and in it she said something pretty troubling. But first off, to be fair, she did not say what this tweet is saying she said. She didn't specifically say she wants to dismantle the economic and political systems of the United States, although I'm sure she wants to, and she wants to replace it with a more Marxian approach. She didn't say that in any precise manner here, though. What she did say is still troubling, though, and here's why. She said, "We can't stop at the criminal justice system. We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it." Now, I'd love to agree with a sentiment like that, and in many ways I do. The war on drugs, the war on poverty, the Federal Reserve, civil asset forfeiture, these are all forms of oppression, and it isn't even subtle. I'd love to see them dismantled and thrown into the dustbin of history. But the problem is, of course, when Ilhan Omar says she wants to dismantle oppression, quote, wherever we find it, she is going to find it absolutely everywhere. It was only a few days ago, for example, I posted a video going through 20 articles, and each article was, quote, exposing how something bland and ordinary was racist or oppressive. And that video ended up being about 10 minutes long, and I could have easily turned it into a 24-hour party of going through innumerable articles in the same vein of, quote, exposing racism. Literally, the way I found most of those articles was thinking of some random noun, plugging it into my search engine, and then just typing, quote, is racist at the end of it. And I just started to laugh at how successful I was each time. I was thinking, there won't be an article about how sweet potatoes are racist. I plug it in, and boom, it comes up. It became ridiculous very quickly. But anyway, the point here is that when Ilhan Omar says she wants to dismantle oppression, she means everything. And at the beginning of the video, she demeans profit. And to be fair, there are some people who make a profit in the U.S. that should not be profiting, but you invariably find them to be tied up and colluding with the state, getting lucrative no-bid state contracts or deploying an army of lobbyists into Congress to influence legislation for their own benefit. I am against all of that. But the insanity within the minds of those who surround people like Ilhan Omar is very unfortunate, because there are clear-cut instances of oppression and political privilege in the U.S. That's the real kind of privilege, by the way. But it becomes so diluted and obscured when people start viewing everything through this postmodernist lens of critical theory. Now, instead of focusing our efforts on what I mentioned before, collusion, war on drugs, war on poverty, Federal Reserve, or civil asset forfeiture, instead of that, we're focused on sweet potatoes and smart speakers, and whether or not silence is violence, or whether someone should lose a job because they made a joke 10 years ago, or whether small business owners are exploiting their workers and exemplifying oppression because they're only paying them $10 an hour even though they have razor-thin profit margins. That's what she's really getting at, given the rhetoric she's espoused since she's entered into the limelight. It's very easy to pick up on the pattern. She didn't say she wants to dismantle everything, she only wants to dismantle oppression. But what happens when oppression is fabricated to make it seem like it's ubiquitous throughout all of society, taking place at all times in nearly every interaction? Where does that leave us? It leaves us nowhere good. So that's the problem. As with many other things within this realm, definitions have become more and more meaningless. Ilhan Omar says we need to end oppression. If she and those around her were sane individuals, I'd have no problem getting on board with that and hearing what they have to say. And I'd point out that the main source of oppression comes from government. But Ilhan Omar and those around her are not sane individuals, nor are they rational. And the definition of oppression has been stretched so it can be applied to nearly anything and everything. It's why these people, like Ilhan Omar, have to put everything under an electron microscope, and yet they still have to BS their way into finding the oppression and racism. So it's unfortunate because something that could have been a good thing becomes poisoned through this insanity. But anyway, the whole thing is ridiculous. It's sad that anyone buys into it. But just like, subscribe, share this video, stop oppressing me, and take it easy.